Hi, this is Brook Chalmers, and you're listening to the Demon Slayer podcast.
Welcome to the Demon Slayer podcast. I am your host, VLordGTZ, and with me today I have the founder of ToonamiFaithful.com, Paul.
Hello.
And we also have a very special guest today, Brook Chalmers, voice of Sakonji Urokodaki in Demon Slayer.
Hello, hello.
So, how are both of you doing today?
Well, I'm doing good. I mean, we have Brooke on the podcast, so there you go.
And I'm also doing well because I'm on the podcast. So, I mean, this is a win-win for all.
Isn't this your first podcast interview?
This is my first interview, not just podcast. We're talking anything. So, this is exciting.
Wow, that's crazy. Now I just feel like more honored that we get to talk to you today.
Oh, the honor is mine. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, so we have quite a few questions to go through. So, Paul, do you want to start us off with them?
Sure. So first question, Brooke, is how did you get your start in the industry?
Voiceover wise, I moved. It's a long journey, as it always is. I moved down. I grew up in Northern California, and I moved down to LA back in '97. So was that 22 years ago now? And I moved down to take a shot at voice acting. And over the years, I've done some here and there, nothing like crazy. And then this year was kind of like the year that I feel like things exploded, and just all of a sudden anime came knocking at my door, and I answered greedily, and the rest is history. So yeah, it's like I've done anime, I've done video games, I've done traditional animation. Yeah, and here we are.
All right. So was voice acting always something you wanted to do?
Yeah. Weirdly, no. I mean, as a kid, I always was making voices and doing goofy things, but my entire teenage life was built for I wanted to go into the military. I wanted to go into the Air Force. And senior year of high school, I started getting into I was in choir. I got into a musical, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I like doing this. And then it kind of I got into some local plays, and I completely 180'd. It was I'm like, nah, I don't want to do the military. I want to do entertainment. So I did some theater and everything, but all the time, I've always felt my voice has been my strong suit. And so I just, I started pursuing that avenue more heavily, and then I moved down here because where I grew up, there's no industry for it up there. So yeah, I came down here.
And speaking of characters, what's your favorite character that you've voiced so far?
Just in anime or just overall?
Overall.
Well, it's got to be probably anime. Man, I would say right now it's a tie between Sakonji and Dahlia on Carol and Tuesday. I think they're both complex, interesting characters that I'm really able to sink into a lot when we're recording. Even though, because Sakonji, on the surface, feels very sort of neutral, but as you've seen, there's a lot going on internally that kind of bleeds out every once in a while, and it's kind of rewarding every time those little elements, crack the surface and come out.
Okay. Well, VLord, I'll turn it over to you now.
Yeah, so one question I have is, since you have done, a lot of American animated series, such as Dragons, Riders of Berk, and Troll Hunters, prior to more of your recent anime roles, was it difficult to adjust to the recording process for anime?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you're recording something like Troll Hunters and those kind of things, they're animating to what you do. So you're really, there's a lot of freedom to, kind of just do what you want. Whereas anime, I always say that anime is trying to cram 5 gallons of acting into a 3-gallon lip bucket. And it's one of those things that, you're trying to honor the source material at the same time trying to add your own flavor to it, and all the while matching lip flaps. And it's interesting. It's like a muscle. I think, the more you do it, the easier it gets. You just start kind of developing internal timing, and initially I was a little rougher at it, and it's just like every session, it's just, you get faster and faster and more comfortable. But it's definitely, there was a transition period where, you're wanting to like add things that you'd normally do in animation, and it's like, nope, you got to record it again. There's no time for that. And you're like, no.
Well, I guess going into some more specific anime roles with Demon Slayer, how are you approached for the role of Urokodaki?
So for Urokodaki, I got an audition, from Bang Zoom, and they basically send you like a tiny clip and the lines, and so you just you listen to the original Japanese, and you kind of get the flavor of what's going on from that. And then I sent it in, and honestly, like, I sent it in, and I'm like, this is a really cool character. He's just got a cool design, and I always like that kind of mentor role. And I sent it in, and I think with anything, you kind of just send stuff in and you try to forget about it, because you'll drive yourself crazy, staring at the computer monitor every day, hoping you get a response about something. And and then I got the email back, and I got it, and it was like, I don't want to say I wept, but I was definitely, it was an emotional thing, because I just thought he was so cool, and I was so honored to get it, and I wanted to just, do him justice and get him out there. And so it was one of those things that it was so rewarding. I felt so blessed, that I got cast.
Wow, that's just so awesome. And like, definitely, like, kind of going off what you said, like, a lot of people, I think, really like find like Urokodaki just a character that really sticks out, like, a lot because of his design and the mask they wears. So it's kind of interesting that for you too, like, that's kind of what stuck out for you.
Yeah, definitely. It's like they send me this guy with a Tengu mask in the front. I'm like, hey, I really want this guy. There's no lip flap to match, But then, like, once you start recording and getting into him, and you realize just how deep and he is, and there's like this just pain that he hides, and and to me, I almost think the mask is it's a shield that he puts in front of himself, because I think that to take the mask off is almost like to take responsibility for his actions, and he's not exactly proud, I think, of what he's done necessarily, and the results of that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, there's so many layers to Urokodaki's character, especially like just from what we learn about him, like those first like 5 episodes or so. But going kind of to the whole mask thing, and like how Urokodaki doesn't really have lip flaps, did that just kind of make the recording process just that more easier, or like did it like allow for a bit more like leeway with recording lines?
Yes, it does. It makes for leeway, and every once in a while, if you see him from the side, you'll see his jaw move, so you have to match the jaw movement, but it does. It gives you a little leeway as far as timing, not a huge amount, but I felt that I can, you can kind of interject a little more nuance, I think, in the lines to sell them, because you really can't kind of see what's going on behind there. And the script that we got was beautifully written, and I mean the lines just like flowed off the page. Just thinking back to the sessions, it warms my heart.
So, like, was there like a favorite scene that you had from your recordings as Urokodaki?
Yes, it's got to be when where are we at on the airings? I think this is past when Tanjiro comes back from the mountain, from the big Demon Slayer test, and he's just so shocked that he returned because so many of the ones that he sent did not. And it's that scene where he's hugging them under the tree. I mean, that was one of those scenes that it was very emotional, and you could just feel this release from him, that that he was probably sitting there thinking he wasn't going to return, and he did. And just, I mean, it was one of those things that after I recorded it, I needed a minute to kind of reset myself, because, it was pretty emotional. And it was one of those scenes where you do kind of see the true kind of soft side of him. I think that's probably my favorite Urokodaki moment.
That's actually like my favorite moment in the entire like anime. So good coincidence.
Bless you.
Yeah, like I've been a fan of Demon Slayer since like the manga. So whenever I see that scene, like I just start tearing up. There's just so much emotion in it, and I think like especially in the dub, your performance there was just fantastic. I loved it so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that came through. It was definitely a lot of emotion in the room.
Yeah, so I guess like talking about Demon Slayer in general, though, before like even the casting process, were you familiar with Demon Slayer at all? And have you been surprised about how popular it's become?
Demon Slayer. Well, let me give you. I'll preface it. Let me give you some context. So, I watched a lot of anime way back in the day. So, like, I mean, growing up as a kid, I watched. I grew up on like Robotech. And and then like I reconnected with like some friends, and like in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we watched like Evangelion and Cowboy Bebop and goofy stuff like Azumanga Daioh, and then the group of friends that I was with that we used to watch a lot of anime, we all kind of just like spread out, like everyone just sort of went and did their things, and I really fell out of watching anime for years and years, and it wasn't until I kind of started the process and getting back into things, and it was like I had heard of Demon Slayer in passing from people at work that were watching it and saying good stuff about it, and so when it came across my computer, I had a passing knowledge, but it was then after that I really started digging in, and it was on, I think it was on Hulu, and the subs, and I started just watching it to get this flavor of it. And I had told myself like, okay, I'm only going to watch like up to this episode that we're recording, because I don't want to know the rest of the story. And I'd get to the end of the episode, and I'm like, I got to watch one more. And then it's like, no, I got to stop. One more. And then next thing I know, I've eaten 24 episodes. So it was like,
wow.
It was it was such a compelling series, and just it looks beautiful, and I mean it was one of those, and then I guess it kind of helped a little, because I had sort of known kind of Urokodaki's like arc and where he was going, and what was going to happen. So I guess that kind of like informed me a little in the booth. But yeah, no, it was one of those things that, like a potato chip bag. I mean, once I started, it was like I couldn't stop till I got to the bottom.
Good old Demon Slayer being an addicting process.
Yeah, and it was good because it was one of my, like, I started naturally. I just started watching the shows that I was getting cast in, because I'm like well, I need to know what's going on and what's like recent and new, and now I'm like kind of catching up, and now I'm starting to try to go back and like, okay, what are shows that I've missed, and what kind of trying to backlog through it, which is not easy and going to take me a long time.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, definitely. So you've been on quite a few shows on Toonami recently. You were Pulpo in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind and Bomb in One Punch Man Season 2. So have you had any familiarity with Toonami prior to all these castings?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an old man, so I don't watch a lot of. I work in animation, which is you'd think that I'd come home and eat animation all the time, but most of the stuff that I watch is with I have 4-year-old twins, and so a lot of the stuff I watch is like with them, and it's younger fare. But once I started hitting the Toonami stuff, then I'm like, okay, I gotta let me start trying to DVR some of this, and so now my DVR is almost full because I have to go back and watch stuff. But I remember, Toonami. Oh man, when was it? There was like a weird robot that used to he was like in a ship. Wasn't that like an old, maybe back in the early 2000s, or I don't know.
Yes, it was. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I remembered that, and I actually worked at Cartoon Network back in 2009 to 2011. And, and there would be a bunch of kind of Toonami stuff floating around. But it wasn't until really recently that I started, trying, hitting it and getting back into the swing of what it was offering, and it's night and day over what I remember it used to be. I mean, it's just a lot of the stuff I'm seeing now. It's very sophisticated, and the storylines are complex, and the characters are cool. It's definitely a solid block of programming. So there's only so far I can go because it's it's on until the wee hours of the morning. So that's where the DVR is going to have to save me.
If I may chime in here real quick, so you said you worked at Cartoon Network. What did you do at Cartoon Network?
I was a PA on. They had a pilot program called Cartoon Institute, and out of that pilot program is what Regular Show came out of, and what eventually became Uncle Grandpa. And then after that, there was a show called Flapjack. I worked on Flapjack for the back half of season 2, all of season 3. And then I worked on another show they did called Secret Mountain Fort Awesome, which ended up becoming Uncle Grandpa. And then before I even worked at Cartoon Network, a friend of mine and we wrote 2 episodes of Chowder.
Wow.
Dang, that's a lot of Cartoon Network stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of Cartoon Network stuff. Yeah, and then I left Cartoon Network to go work on the How to Train Your Dragon series, which there was 2 seasons of that on Cartoon Network, and then the whole DreamWorks Netflix run. I was on that the whole way through. So yeah, it's been a bouncing around. And it's funny, I went to college for live action television production and ended up in animation. Lesson to all you that are listening: just go where the wind blows you.
So picking up off of Toonami, so how does it feel to have your show on Toonami? Well, you've been on multiple shows actually, but how does it feel to have it on there?
Well, it was crazy. There was one night I think I was on 3. I was. It was from going from never not being on there to all of a sudden all over it was cool and surreal. I think it's parts of it still don't feel real. I think I'm so blessed and happy for every one of these roles, and so thankful that I have them. And the fact that they're out there, and people are watching it and people are enjoying it, and and the response on like Twitter and everything has just been like so welcoming and warm, and I never could have thought, the fandoms have just been so very cool. And, like there was the one night it was like, it was Demon Slayer, then it was a One Punch Man, and then it was, and then JoJo's. And, I remember, I think it was that night they were all airing and I wanted to be home, but we ended up going to like Disneyland that day. But I was at Disneyland and I knew like when they were airing on the East Coast. So I kept like, I'd go on Twitter, I'm like, I hope everyone's liking it, and I'm still like in that everything's really new and fresh phase where, it's cool to see the responses, and that something that you've done and worked on and have been passionate about is out there and people are enjoying it. It's just a very cool feeling.
And are there any shows that you've recorded, I would say anime-wise at this point, that you would want to see on the block?
Most of the stuff I've been recording, I think, is on there already.
Except for Carol and Tuesday, I guess.
Well, yeah, Carol and Tuesday is on Netflix. But I don't know. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'm not sure, like flavor-wise, if it has that sort of fit. Toonami, it feels very actiony. The block, and what was another one I just I was watching? Oh, was it? It's not traditional anime, but Seis Manos.
Oh yeah, I love that show,
dude. That feels like it would slug into a Toonami slot pretty cool. But yeah, I don't have any complaints of what I've seen on there. That's for sure. Their programming block is pretty tight, and not like 90s tight, like cool, but I'm showing my age again. You kids are watching the cartoons.
And before we let you go, and is there anything that any projects that you have coming up that you can talk about, or like that you want to plug?
Obviously, if they're not out, we can't, because we sign phone books of NDAs. There's the new Lupin the Third Goodbye Partner special just came out on Amazon. I play the head of Interpol in that. So go check that out. Definitely more good bomb stuff on One Punch Man's coming. I can't wait for that. Some crazy scenes that we recorded to hit. And I think too, and don't quote me on it as I'm being recorded. I want to say, because it's funny when you go in like for like Demon Slayer, when you go in to record, you'll record like your main guy, but then they always have you record, like, oh, hey, we're going to have you do, this generic guy, or we'll have you, they always have you do like, little filler characters. Mm-hmm. And I want to say when the Muzan, when Tanjiro runs into him on the street, there's a guy that what is he he scratches him or he bites him and he turns into something funky.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah, I think I did. I think I was him. So it's funny because like I'll be watching and I'll hear like or something. I'm like, oh my god, I did those grunts.
Yeah, I think he mainly talks in like the next episode. So I guess we have like that to look forward to.
Yeah, little scratch guy. But yeah, no, I mean, like I said, it's shocking to me how how fast everything happened. Like this year, it was one of those things that I was like, well, I'm gonna, I'm giving the dubbing a shot, and let's, see what happens. And it was, bam, 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 and like sweet Polpo on JoJo's, that got me my first action figure. One of my bucket lists was like, I just want a figure of something I voiced, and I found on eBay they had Polpo's stand, Black Sabbath, which he's called I think Shadow Sabbath here, but they had it on eBay. So there was the actual like a 7-inch tall figure, and I was like, yes, bucket list, check.
You can always rely on JoJo for having like figures for literally anything, no matter how minor.
I know. Well, they had a little Polpo figure. He was tiny, like smaller than a pop, and but it was only on like a action figure exchange website or some weird thing. So I'm like, I guess I won't get him. But yeah, he was that was a crazy character to do. That was a lot of fun.
So yeah, I guess that about does it for this interview. Thank you so much for being on, Brook.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so I guess we should probably just plug our stuff and get out of here. So, Paul, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, as usual, at Paul Pascrillo.
And, Brook, where can people find you?
Oh, all over the place. I'm on Twitter at Brook Chalmers VO. I have a website, brookchalmersvo.com. There's a theme here. And, yeah, those are probably the two main places to find me. And yeah, feel free to ask me questions. I'm very fan friendly, so don't be afraid to drop me a message and ask a question or just say hello.
Well, awesome. Yeah, definitely hit Brook up on like really anything. He's like a really awesome person, so obviously give him some love.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, you see, he's trying to suck up to you now, Brook. You see that?
Damn it!
It's all part of my master plan.
Yeah, well done.
But yeah, as for myself, you can find me on Twitter at VLordGTZ, where I'm usually up to either doing reviews, reading manga, or not sleeping, or all three at the same time. And as far as the podcast goes, you can find that on Twitter at D-Slayer Podcast, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Demon Slayer Podcast, and on the Toonami Faithful website at ToonamiFaithful.com/Demon Slayer Podcast. And you can follow any of those to get updates on when the podcast comes out and various news about the podcast. As for the podcast itself, it's on a wide variety of podcasting platforms: Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, we're there. So subscribe to us on whatever, and make sure to check out all our episodes. So yeah, we will see you guys later.
Bye.